So in this video we're going to be thinking about the music of Bob Dylan. But before we think about that, let's remind ourselves about the statement of inquiry. Cultural expression reflects the time, place and space of the artist that created it. So in this video we'll consider how Bob Dylan, his work reflects that of the time, place and space of the 1960s and the important social changes that occurred. We'll also be looking at the global context and the personal and cultural expression aspect of MYP. Bob Dylan is not just another famous musician. His works over the past few decades have become the anthems of various movements, political views and public opinion. Bob Dylan's work was at the forefront of civil rights movement. His work represented this, helped move the movement forward, and helped people to understand the important social change of the 1960s. His songs were directly influenced by current events of the time. A very important part of Bob Dylan's work was the concept of protest and civil disobedience. So he's not just another famous musician. The works over the past few decades have become the anthems of those movements, political movements and liberation of people. So much so that he reflected his time so much that he was commended by Obama for his contribution to American culture and helping to change the country for the better. Bob Dylan's songs were particularly attractive to people because they looked at real-life experiences of the current events. One of these events was the murder of Medgar Evers, a civil rights worker, and it's heavily featured in his song Only a Pawn in Their Game. Another example can be seen in the lonesome death of Hattie Carroll. Bob Dylan also sang about the plight of poor people. He also expressed deep despair for the farming and mining communities with the Ballad of Hollis Brown and the North Country Blues. Many people who are living through these difficult times could associate themselves with what Bob Dylan was talking about and singing about in his songs. Bob Dylan really was an artist of his time, so his artistry and his music did really reflect the time that he was living in. We've seen how those times were changing, so looking at the global context, we can see that as an artist, he showed this, represented this, and helped move this forward. So going back to our global context, we can see artistry in the work of Bob Dylan. Artistry beyond just being a good musician, but helping people to understand the changes that were going on in the 1960s. On top of that, Bob Dylan was not just a musician and a talented singer-songwriter, he crafted a story. The story told the changes that people were going through at the moment, and many people felt this reached out to their hearts. He understood them and why society was changing so much in the 1960s. So going back to our global context here, we can see that he really did craft and create a wonderful story and a dialogue that even many future generations can really help to understand what happened in the 1960s. So Bob Dylan created a lot of music, but he also helped create and strengthen the civil rights movement. The importance of being a human being. He reached out to people that were having a difficult time and experiencing changes. Bob Dylan really can be seen as a humanist. He put humans and the changes, their suffering, their plight, at the very centre of his work. Blowing in the Wind was one of his greatest works as an artist. Bob's song, Blowing in the Wind, was heavily influenced by the older folk song No More Auction Block, which is about the end of slavery. This song sounds very, very similar in places to Blowing in the Wind. He did in fact do a cover of the original. Hey guys, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and leave a comment below. Please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel. This YouTube video is part of a playlist. We will start off by listening to No More Auction Block, and then the playlist will move on to show a few of Bob Dylan's most memorable pieces of work. Please enjoy No More Auction Block, and please enjoy his work. And as you listen to these fantastic songs that are so cleverly crafted and created and shows Bob as a humanist, please consider the words and how important they are to people who lived in the 1960s and how indeed they are important to us living in 2019. Thanks guys.